Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today, we have a real, just special, awesome human that I just virtually met, but feel like I've been connected to for quite some time, just given the mutual network and how much her work just speaks to me personally. So we've got Shay on the show. Are you okay with Shay? I heard Vishen from Mind Valley call you Shay. So is that okay for?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shay. And it's Sheleana.
It's
right?
Sheleana.
Sheleana.
Yeah.
Sheleana. What a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit more about Shay. She was inspired to start Rising Women just over 2.5 million people following along that channel after undergoing significant personal transformations and healing journeys. Her tumultuous upbringing, marked by a lack of a father figure, a mother battling trauma and mental illness, and time spent in foster homes, laid the groundwork for spiritual and emotional growth. A pivotal moment came after a painful divorce in her early 20s, which led to a spiritual awakening and deep dive into inner healing through shadow work, inner child work, and other therapeutic practices. I mean, there's so much more to say, but I hope that captures a bit of a flavor of your backstory. But welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into just all the beautiful work that you put out into this world. But before we do that, I always try to strip away the bios and titles and all of that and just start with a question I know you've reflected on. And that's, in this moment, who are you?
Just starting with the deepest spiritual question you could start with. I love that. Who am I? I mean, ultimately, I'm just a human being on a spiritual path, and on a professional level, I'm a writer, I'm an author. At home, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, and I feel that all of my experiences have sort of shaped me and prepared me to be of deeper service in the world. And so all of the pain and the heartache and traumas that I've experienced have always felt like a preparation. And so I'm really grateful to be in this position now where I have the opportunity to share that through my books and through my writing online and with good people like you on podcasts. Mhm.
You guys are just back from 2 months away from your home on the west coast of Canada.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, for moments like that when you're away in different environments and so forth, like how that shifts, not the whole essence of obviously who you are. I mean, usually those are bigger life events and so forth, but how has time away in these like kind of mini sabbaticals, I guess, from the main home base, how has that helped your evolution of who you're striving to become?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think one of the things that I've noticed is that depending on where I am in the world, different aspects of my psyche are evoked. And so every
Mm,
different landscape, the different plants, the different animals, the sun, it all sort of shifts. Also, I love astrocartography, which is a form of astrology where you're looking at the different lines that are present for you. So, your moon line, for
mm,
example, runs through certain parts of the planet. And so I pay close attention to that actually wherever I am. So we were just on my Pluto line for 2 months, which is quite intense and
yeah.
also really good. My daughter's on her moon line there, so that was interesting. She just slept like a dream there. And I've always found travel to be this really potent activator for gratitude and just for understanding oneness and unity and how incredible it is that we can all be living on the same planet and yet be experiencing such vastly different realities. And just remembering that there is no one way to live. And that's a really important reminder. And also being so grateful for the soul incarnation that I have in this life and the abundance that is in my life, because not everybody gets to experience that. Sometimes when I'm away, I think, wow, some people will never see the ocean in their entire
Mhm.
life. And what a gift it is to be able to live right next to the ocean. It's little things like that. And I find nature to be the thread of home for me wherever I go. So I really like to connect to the plants and the trees and the flowers and the food there and really get to know, what is it that sustains this place and what wants to grow here and why. So it's always such a beautiful process for me. I love traveling. I love meeting people from all over the world. It's just so fun.
How much of that came or lived in you or seeped through in your real, like in your early days in some of the darkest times? And you could share as many details if you'd like, just to
Mm.
provide some context. But I'm curious to know, like, if you felt glimpses of that connection to nature and people and so forth, even in what seemed like, a completely different world that you were living in to what obviously you're living in today.
Yeah, nature has always been that thread. So in my work, I really do create this web with the divine energies of mother and father and that connection to self and that connection to spirit with transpersonal therapy and nature, because so often it's the human kin that let us down and disappoint us, because of course we're all human, we can't be perfect. But nature is always there to hold us. And so in my life, that's always been a common thread, weaving me
Mm.
back. So, as early as I can remember, one of my first dreams when I was like 2.5, I would often be at the bottom of this waterfall in this pool, and I would float up to the top, and then there would be this open field, and it was just so beautiful. And then I had that dream over and over and again throughout my life when I was really, really small, like 2 to 3 years old. And I've always carried that dream with me. And then actually my husband and I got engaged, and it was at that exact waterfall that I had the vision of.
Of course it was.
And except for that when you levitate to the top, there's no field, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was almost exactly that. And it just reminds me that there is so much more going on than what we really know, consciously. And I like to remind people that the elements are always there to hold us when
Mhm.
we feel like we're lost. And there's always a place that we belong with the earth. And that's always been something that's brought me a lot of comfort. So hours and hours and hours, days in the forest alone and feeling really connected through that. And my hope is that with this technology centered world where we're just getting absorbed into our phones and absorbed into AI and lost into the abyss of the matrix, that we will remember that the true connection is within ourselves and in nature, and to get outside in bare feet, to ground, to swim in the ocean, to swim in the lakes, and to really learn how to village with one another again, because ultimately that is what matters. So it's a big piece of my work too, is weaving in that reminder.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated, just, like, I'm a fan of course, technology, and it brings us the ability for, for us to have this conversation. But
Yeah.
to your point, it's like anything within, whenever we over-index in something or go to the extremes is usually where we run into some trouble, right? And what I love about nature and just I think in general, like even when I study a lot of different ancient wisdom and teachers and so forth on from the mental fitness lens, everything always just comes back to the basics,
It does,
right?
yeah.
It's like, get outside, get some sunlight, some good water, move around, breathe fresh air,
Yeah.
connect with your environment. Like, it doesn't, we make it so complicated or try to make it so complicated around, like, I need red light therapy. Well, you can just
Mhm.
open the door and go outside. I mean,
Mhm.
I get it. And so, I mean, I have a panel here as well, but I mean,
I mean, unless you live where we live, and then you do need
yeah,
a red light
exactly.
to survive.
Fair, fair. Yeah, we're just in survival mode for half of the year. But it's just, it's there, like, and it's there for everyone, and for the most part, it's free as
Yeah.
well, right? And like not to underestimate how powerful that is, even in your darkest moments,
Mhm.
right? How did how did Rising Women start? Just so people have an idea, and what is it?
Mhm. Yeah, it's Rising Woman, and,
Rising Woman,
yeah,
sorry.
Rising Woman, just so that people, when they go looking for it, they'll be able to find
Yeah.
it. So I started Rising Woman. It was sort of just an idea that I had when I felt this real connection to women's empowerment, really in my early 20s. There was a moment that I had when I was 19 years old, and I was in a very abusive relationship. And without getting into the gruesome details, I had locked myself in the bathroom. And when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. And then I just had this flash, like the top of my head opened up, and this vision poured in of me speaking on stage to women. And I got this message: this is a part of your purpose. This is a part of your story. You're meant to work with women.
Mm.
And so I carried that through with me until, maybe 7 or so years later. And the name Rising Woman came to me, and I spent thousands of dollars on a payment plan getting the domain when I had no money to
Yeah.
buy it, and no business plan, nothing. It wasn't a business for me. It was just a place where I could share my writing. And I began sharing my writing, and then it just sort of exploded on its own. And we grew to over, two was where we're at, like 2.6 million followers. And it was just really cool to see how responsive people were to the work that I was putting out, and I didn't really expect it to grow like that in so
Yeah.
quickly. And so for the first few years, it was just that. It was just an outlet for me to share my writing and to be of service, to give, so I gave a lot. And then eventually I started to offer programs, and now, we're where we are now. We're a seven-figure business, as well. But ultimately, the root of it is a place for women and some men to explore what the truth of conscious relationship really is, that connection to self, that connection to spirit, that connection to nature and to other. It's not just a relationship with another person, it's about that core relationship you have with yourself, but also with the whole web of life. And so
Mm.
it's really a place for inner work to occur. And we also weave in astrology, and, we share the new and full moon reports and things like that. But it's just been a real joy to be able to work with so many women. I've had over 50,000 women around the world take my program called Becoming the One, which was then my first book. Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
So I'd love to know from the time there's that 7-year period of writing,
Mhm.
and from at least what you're sharing, when, you had that vision come to
Mhm.
you and that, like, sense of purpose
Mhm.
and, like, "I'm meant to do this," and
Mhm.
I'd love to just go a little deeper into that because, I've felt that over my journey as well and continue to feel it even in this next book that I'm working on.
Mhm.
But then there's also, and you might be different, but I know a lot of people listening will probably resonate with this. There's from that moment to, whatever continues to unfold, but it's that in between place that is challenging usually. Like
Mhm.
you can hear the vision and what you're meant to do, but then you're faced with regular life stuff
Mhm.
every day, and the hour and hour and so forth. So I'm curious, like, what kind of obstacles were you confronted with, and are there practices and strategies for your mind that you've adopted over those years
Mhm.
to stay in alignment with, like, I know I'm meant to do this. This is, probably just a sign that I'm on the right path, but
Mhm.
it's still hard in those moments.
Mhm. Yeah, what's interesting for me is that I never really felt this strong tension between where I was and where I was going. There were times, I got the idea for Rising Woman, and then I sort of let it sit for a while, and then I just waited. And I just sort of knew that there would come a time when it was time. And then when I felt that it was time, I just began. And I guess because I've been writing since I was like 4 years old, it's always been a part of me that I was never really waiting for anything. I was just sort of being where I was at. And I'm a in human design. Are you familiar with that system at
Yeah,
all?
I'm a projector.
Okay, me too. And so my profile lines are the 6 2. So, the 6 line is broken up into 3 life phases, right? And that's 0 to 30 phase is all about just sort of gathering those lessons, and usually really the hard way. So having a lot of intense experiences, going through all of the things that you could possibly experience to sort of integrate wisdom later on. And so I really felt like my first 30 years were all about that. It was just a lot of trying and failing and experiencing and heartache and loss and betrayal and my own shadows spilling out into my life, and really having to fall over many, many times and then take a good hard look in the mirror. And so by the time I was ready, it was obvious to me that it was just time to begin sharing what I was integrating, which is why, for the first few years,
Mm,
I didn't offer anything. I was still apprenticing. Um, and it was just sort of an organic process. And I've always had this trust, even with this book that I'm writing now. I've got my third book coming next year.
ooh, tell us more. Give us a little teaser.
Yeah, I'm writing a book in correlation to nature and heartbreak.
Mm,
And I actually got the idea for this manuscript, and I wrote the outline for the first manuscript of this book the day that I submitted my Becoming the One manuscript. That was in
okay.
2020 or 2021. And now we're in 2025, and I've only just finally been like, okay, now is the time. I've been sitting on that for years, and there was just a message from spirit, and it just told me it's not time yet. There's more you have to experience. There's more you need to go through before you're ready to write this book. Well, in that time, I
Mm,
became a mother. I met grief in an entirely new way. My whole spiritual lens shifted. My ideas and my preconceived notions about so many things in the spiritual reality shifted. And then, of course, now I'm in my 9 year, which is all about deaths and endings and the completion of a cycle. So there is this element of trust that if it feels like it's not time, that doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It probably means that you're being prepared for something even more beautiful. And if you can allow yourself to surrender to the mystery and just be in the experience, the wisdom and the medicine that's going to alchemize in you as a result of your patience can bring you so much more abundance, because it's really about that alchemy of that letting
yeah.
yourself cook. And of course, there's
Ooh.
discomfort there, right? We know something is coming, or something's ending, or something's dying, and we don't quite know what it is. We can't put our finger on it. And we wish we could just have clarity and full control. But once we get to the other side of it, we realize that it was all perfect. And I feel like that's even a place that I'm in now.
Yeah, well, this is what I mean around, like, this space in between, because everything that you said, I mean, I feel a lot of that as well,
Yeah.
but also, it's like you're it's like you're one step in kind of new self and one step in old self, which I think we're always kinda oscillating between as we're growing, which is
Mhm.
fantastic, but there are, at least for me, there are moments where it's like, oh, like, in the moment, it's challenging,
Yeah.
and for me, it's like I have to rely on kind of every mental fitness practice or journaling flow that I've ever encountered to just, like, to your point, like, surrender to that experience. I'm curious, just
Mhm.
practically speaking, for the people listening
Yeah.
or watching, what has helped for you? Do you have any tools that have been, like, real kind of foundational in those moments when you're in between?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always shifting for me as, of course, I evolve in my own spiritual practice. One
Yeah.
thing is I really have been enjoying homeopathy, working with
Ooh, tell
the
me more about that.
so homeopathy is where you're taking the extremely diluted, essence of a plant or of
Okay.
a milk or of an experience, and you're working with the energetic essence of that
Mm,
thing because it's so diluted. And when we look at the structure of water, we see that it changes based on what it's infused with, right? Intention, thought, energy, a
yeah.
plant. And so we're essentially working with these dilutions. And I've worked most recently with dolphin milk, which has been really interesting. It's called,
Interesting.
lacdelphinum. And so I've really found that that has been supportive, and of course, homeopaths are so deep at seeing patterns. I love kundalini chantings, chanting Sanskrit chants, mantras.
Okay.
The vibrational energy can really elevate your internal world. It's like getting high for me. I start with the mantra, and then as I'm singing and chanting, 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, I feel like I'm just in ecstasy. And so I
Mm,
love that anchoring practice, especially as a mom, because I can do it anytime, and I can do it with my daughter, and I can do it in the morning, and I can just put on a chant and just sing. And so I love that one. Singing, of course, and
yeah.
ritual, ceremony, fire ritual, and somatic experiencing, doing somatic practices and really working with the nervous system as well. That's been absolutely paramount. And I've woven somatic experiencing practitioners into every single program that we offer through Rising Woman because it's just moved the needle so much for me. So I like to bridge the spiritual with the nervous system work because if you don't have one, and you're really missing that integration.
Yeah.
So those have been some of the most impactful tools for me. And of course, being in nature, always barefoot, going out into the
Yeah.
forest, going for a cold dip in the lake or the ocean, having a nice
Yeah.
warm salt bath at home.
Mm,
Mhm,
that's beautiful.
mhm.
Were there any other rituals that you were experimenting with while you were away
Not really.
recently?
No, not really,
No?
to be honest. We went away without
Okay.
any help, so it's just my husband and I and our dog and our two-year-old, and then we had, our
Yeah.
friends around. So our practice really was just staying present instead of being in the future all of the time. We barely were
Okay.
able to have a conversation most of.
Yeah. 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 No, fair.
Yeah, my daughter has this thing right now where when we're talking, she starts screaming and then goes, "No talking, mommy, no talking, daddy." So, just to be perfectly honest, no, there was not a lot of
Yeah.
spiritual practice happening. I would meditate
Yeah.
or chant any moment I got, and if I was really losing
Okay.
it, I would just start to put on my chants, and then we would she would be there with me, and we would do yoga or we would do our Sanskrit chants, but that was about it.
I'm gonna borrow that one. My wife and I had this yesterday so in Ontario right now, it's March break.
Yeah.
And, so this 8-year-old is at home and 3-year-old is always here, but I work in the basement in a home office and came up and literally just wanted to, like, share some stuff for, like, 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and we just, like 2 young boys just we it felt like I would say 3 words and be like, "Guys, can you just, like, give us a second here?"
Yeah.
And, like, as much distracting as possible,
Yeah.
get another 4 words out, and it's just so disruptive
Yeah,
when
it's
you just wanna have a moment, right?
yeah, we just gave up so many times. We're like, "You know what? I'll talk to you next year." Like, we're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
gonna
exactly.
and there it's a challenge too to be present, and I notice even with my daughter, I often am planning the future. I'm a planner, and so I'll be like, "Guess what we're gonna do, next year or tomorrow?" She'll be like, "Right now? Right now?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Right. Right now." Be
yeah,
present. And so one of the things that I've found when we're traveling that is a really beautiful ritual for us to do is make little nature mandalas, which we do here too, but we're on the beach. And so I would say, let's make an offering for the ocean. Let's say our gratitude to
mm,
the ocean. And so we would go collect rocks and shells and we would build a little nature mandala and we'd say, thank you, ocean. Thank you, sky. And, it's just those little things. And she really
yeah,
is a spiritual teacher for me, reminding me to be present, reminding me that I am powerless in a lot of ways and that that's okay. And that it's okay to just
yeah.
be in the moment and what's going to be will be. And we don't get to control it all. The only thing that we get to control is how we respond to each given moment.
Yeah. They are real they are such gifts and to your I love they are spiritual teachers
Yeah.
to us. I keep them my 3-year-old is on this kick right now where, he'll be standing right in front of me and say, "Are you here, dad?" And
Yeah.
it's like, "Yeah, I'm right here, like, I'm looking right at you," but it's like a reminder of, "Yeah, am I right here? Like, or am I
Mhm.
thinking of something?" And
Yeah.
it's just it is like a beautiful little micro pause that if we hear it, like, we can really experience it.
Yeah.
And I think the other topic that's really important that you're bringing up here that and outside of it, this works for people that aren't parents as well, but just being kind to ourselves and realistic in the sense of sure we all have practices and rituals and modalities and so forth that we know work well for us, but also to adjust based on your environment or what's going on. And it sounds like you guys hung on to like the pure non-negotiables and weren't like judging yourselves for not doing all of the other things maybe you would have done at home or so forth, right? And just being okay with that. Because I see it. People get like sometimes people get real wrapped up. It's like, oh, I can't get this and I can't
Mhm.
and then it just spirals.
Yeah, I've really always felt that spirituality is more of an organic process and it's an embodiment of a way of life. It's not, you can do all of the practices and not actually be living a spiritual life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Living a spiritual life, are you embodied? Are you being kind? Are you being of service? Are you noticing the little glimmers? Are you responding to spirit's offerings to you? Are you surrendering to the mystery? Are you just allowing yourself to be present and enjoy the love that's right in front of you? For me, living a spiritual life doesn't have anything to do necessarily with all of the practices or the yoga or the rituals, because those are things that we do, but what are we embodying? And so
Yeah.
it's like all of those things are really beautiful, but they don't inherently make us more aware unless we choose to respond differently in each moment in our waking life. And so I think it's really important to remember that you don't have to have the 3-hour morning ritual, or you don't have to go and do a dark retreat in order to live a spiritual life. Everybody's spiritual path is going to look different. And especially if you have a family, your spiritual path
Mhm.
is how can you breathe through these moments and hold mountains of space and bring patience and devotion and curiosity to the most intense overstimulating moments, and it's going to be different if you're a single person. Is how can you lean into love? How can you ask for help? How can you put yourself out into your community and be of service when you're feeling low, as a way to remind yourself that you're part of a greater web of life? Everybody's path is going to look different. I don't think there's one path that is right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Who are some of your teachers?
Mm.
If you think of the and I'll be a little bit more specific, but from the ancient world or some of the wisdom keepers and so forth. Are there any people that come to mind?
Sorry, you just cut out a little bit there, so I didn't hear the last sentence.
Oh, yeah, I just who are some of your teachers and more specifically, just if there are any people that come to mind from kind of the ancient worlds
Mm,
or,
mhm,
that are, well written about and so forth, because I'd love to research some of these people to see who's guiding you and so
mhm,
forth and pick up on their practices and
mhm,
philosophies.
mhm. Yeah, to be quite honest, a lot of the wisdom that I receive when I'm just alone without a phone or a book in the forest. There's a lot that happens for me when I'm just out in nature, um, and I can't.
What does that look and feel like?
It's really, to just, I guess this is one of the things of the two line, right? In human design, they say, the hermit, and um, the 6-2 is, we aren't really here to explain how we know what we know.
Yeah.
And so, to be quite honest, sometimes I just go out for a walk and all of a sudden something drops into me. Um, a
Yeah.
song. I just created a kids album for all of the songs that I've caught since having my daughter. Those all just dropped into me, looking at the moon or going for a walk in the forest or holding her through a hard moment. So for sure there's a huge piece of that unexplained wisdom that just I've received by being quiet, and I feel a lot of times that sometimes I'm being guided by more ancestral wisdom. I can feel a real connection to my ancestors. They're guiding me. And then of course I have human teachers. I
Yeah.
apprenticed with a transpersonal therapist for 4 years, trained with him for like 6. I've trained with Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt. I've trained
Okay.
with Mark Willen, he's sort of the creator of Family Constellations. Did It Didn't Start With You, that book. Diane
Okay.
Poole Heller, Peter Levine. I've trained with all of them in different
Mm,
modalities. And then on the spiritual sense of things, like I said, a lot of it is nature wisdom, but also I've really enjoyed reading some Buddhist texts. Like I love the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying. It's a really beautiful one.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
I've just sort of started digging into the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Ooh,
Uh huh.
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm asking as I'm starting to research my second book is looking at that between space
Hmm.
that we've been talking about. And, this is obviously not a new concept, but I feel like there's so many people that have invested, and myself included, have invested intentionally in their development and growth and so forth, more than, many, I think more than ever really at this point. But it also comes with a feeling of when you equip yourself with the tools, as you start to feel a hell of a lot more as well. And sometimes, again, it feels really challenging. It's like, and this happened when I was speaking with Diego. He's like, yeah, my my anxiety I've softened it through meditation,
Hmm.
but there are times I'm like, you're still there, right? And it's
Yeah.
not, again, I don't think we're trying to get rid of it, but
Yeah.
there's like this between world
Hmm.
of, well, what do I do? Or maybe I don't do anything. But so I'm starting to have conversations with some of these ancient teachers through AI platforms, obviously to
Mm.
leverage their written work to see like how are different cultures and different modalities and rituals and practice, like how's everyone kind of approaching this topic,
Mhm.
and what can we play with and experiment with and so forth. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing some of your teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful to look at the ancient wisdom, and one of the things that I've found is that all cultures around the world had ceremony and ritual to mark important passings of time in their lives, whether that was a breakup
Yeah.
or a divorce or a death or a birth or some sort of milestone. We always had ritual. There was an honoring of
Yeah.
it, and there wasn't a making wrong of it, but there was an honoring of it, and that's something that I aim to invite people to bring back into their own lives as well, because it's incredible to see somebody can be grieving something for 7 years, and then we do a very simple closing ritual, and the next day they feel like they've shed 100 pounds off their back. And it really can
Yeah.
be that simple. And so just remembering our ancestors really did have powerful rituals and tools to mark passings of time that can help us now. Um, and that's something that I think a lot of us have lost that we really crave to bring back.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that, and especially in North America. I
Mhm.
mean, it's around the world, but
Yeah.
I would say even more so in North America, we've really lost a lot of those traditions, and they're literally like you were mentioning, they're rituals that have been around like since the beginning of time. So
Mhm.
it's pretty tried and tested. How do you bring in some of that flavor into the work that you do?
Well, one of the things that I like to invite people to do is create their own altars with elements.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
uh, for example, we work a lot with fire and water. So, anger is your fire and sadness is your water. And so, one of the simple practices that I often take people through is this exploration of their most dominant emotion. Are you more comfortable with anger or are you more comfortable with sadness? If you're more comfortable with anger, then you probably have a strong defense mechanism where you don't really want to be seen. It's easier for you to protect and defend. It's harder for you to let people in and let people see you and your vulnerability. So then your growth edge would actually be to lean into your water more, to allow yourself to admit, hey, that hurt me, or I need help, or I'm scared. If your dominant emotion is sadness, if you're most comfortable with tears, you resort to tears when you're upset or in conflict, but you have a really hard time showing your anger, perhaps you're even afraid of it, then there's a good chance too that you might be people pleasing, that you might be putting everyone before yourself. You might have a really hard time setting boundaries. So then your growth edge is actually to lean into the fire and to practice putting yourself first, to practice speaking your truth, and to practice setting boundaries. And so I would invite them to bring those elements onto their altar and to work with it every day. So you can have a little bowl of water, you have a candle, you light the candle, and you sit with the water, and you just meditate with it for a few moments. And then other
Okay.
little things that I like to bring in are putting a photo of your inner child on your altar, and then bringing in some items that remind you of the essence of your inner child, those things that lit you up and that were creatively inspiring to you before you went through adolescence. And so that can help reconnect you to your innate essence that you were born with, and inviting people to actually start to practice those things and see how it feels as an adult to get creative in those ways.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've worked with so many people. Are there any kind of case studies or examples that come to mind that you'd love to share just to even I think you've already done a really good job
Mm.
showing what's possible and exciting people, but I want to give them as much as possible to like, oh, that sounds fantastic. Let me try that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've had, like I said, tens of thousands of women who have gone through my programs with me and work. I've had women, one that comes to mind is she's over 60. I won't say her exact age, so we don't give any identifying factors, but she spent about 30 years doing inner work and going in and out of a relationship that was really just not right for her. There was a lot of emotional unavailability, and she had sort of tried everything. And then when she began doing the somatic work with me and also the ritual work, the altar building and the reconnecting to her inner child, she came to a retreat with me, and for the first time in her entire life she had met her inner child, and she had been trying for 30 years. And I think the power of having her immersed in nature and then doing it through ritual was really life changing. And from that point on, she ended that relationship and was actually much more connected to herself. And it's just been a really beautiful thing to witness somebody who's on the more tail end of their life, right? Not, of course, not the end of their life, but
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
we live in phases. And when you're in your 60s, you're in the later part of your life. And to
yeah,
work with women in that place where they get to live out the final, 20 to 30 years, maybe even
yeah.
more of their lives in devotion to themselves and in connection to themselves, that to me is just so beautiful.
Oh, it's such a beautiful gift. It's got to just fill up your heart,
So
right?
much.
Just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's really, really
yeah.
special.
So what's got you excited for the months to come or the years
Mm.
to come? Like what's I mean, obviously you're working on the next book,
Yeah.
but I guess what's top of mind? What are some intentions that you have out in the universe right now?
Well, my mantra for this year is creation for creation's sake. And so that is all
Mm,
about really diving into the creative works that inspire me, not because they're going to make me money or they're going to make me famous or they're going to get me acknowledgement, but because they're coming from a deep place within. And that's what I want to create. And so I'm focusing on that. And of course, service to my community through just more content, more free writing, just really being in that space of creativity, what fuels me, especially coming out of this fairly intense past 3 years of pregnancy and then having a toddler. I'm just starting to come into the world again. And so much has changed already just in the past 3 years. And I've felt a little bit wobbly re entering the social media space. And so I decided, you know what, creativity for creativity's sake, without an agenda to get anything. So I'm really
mm.
excited about that. Like I said, I'm recording a kids album. I've written two children's books. I have my adult book that's coming out. And I'm just enjoying connecting with my audience and with my creative works, and also just being present with my family and being in nature and bringing people into that space more too with retreats and things like that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where can we follow along?
So I am on Instagram at Rising Woman. And I also have my personal page, which is at Sheleana Aiyana. But if you follow me there, you will get pictures of food and my dog. I don't share photos of my daughter's face, but you'll see cute little family photos where her face is always blurred out. And my website is risingwoman.com. I'm, of course, on YouTube at Rising Woman. And all of my books, I have my current book and my journal are available, of course, on Amazon, in bookstores, mostly worldwide. It's been translated into about 20 different languages. You can find that in most places in the world. And I think that's it.
Amazing. Well, that's so exciting. I mean, I want to thank you for, of course, your time for coming on the show, but a higher thank you for just following your path.
Mhm.
And like we didn't dive too deep into your past, and people will pick that up in your book and in your work. But you're coming from a very different place in terms of where you're at. And I would say, your beautiful daughter's upbringing is
Mm.
is very different than what you experienced. And
Mhm.
I hope you feel that that
Mm.
that sense of pride and gratitude. And because of all of that, I mean, the ripple effect across the world is exponential, and that's we need more of that in this world. So
Mm.
thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you acknowledging that. And yeah, it's been a real gift to heal those deeper wounds, even that weren't super top of mind through mothering. And it's incredible how much work you can do. And then when you have a transition in life, whether that be having a child or going through something in your life that feels like it's ripping you open, you see these deeper layers of your own heart and mind. So it's been potent, to say the least.
Yes, yes. Well said. Thank you.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.